We're going to talk about immigration. Obviously, I've already said it, the status of the current immigration system, it is broken. Everybody says that. You know, they say, oh, the immigration system is broken, but they don't really tell you why. I'm going to give you some specific examples as to why I say the immigration system is broken. Number one of the fastest things you can do in immigration is be given a green card by a U.S. citizen child that is over 21. Your U.S. citizen child that is over 21 and you entered lawfully. So let's say you entered lawfully into the United States, you came in with a tourist visa. And that tourist visa gave you lawful entry. And then what happened? Somebody offered you a job and you stayed. Okay, a lot of people go, wait, stop there, Michael. That's illegal. Okay, I know. But the law talks about your entry, right? So you came here lawfully. You brought your physical and legal body together to the United States and you are in the country lawfully. And then you overstay your visa for whatever reason. Those people, when they go from overstay status to a residency status, it takes them between 9 and 18 months. 9 and 18 months. Why? Does it take you 9 to 18 months to determine somebody is somebody else's child? Does it take you 9 to 18 months to look at the tax return to see if that child makes enough money to sponsor their parent? Or if they don't, do they have a co-sponsor? Just look at their taxes and their forms? This is all form-based. No one's going anywhere. I mean, they do interviews, but 70% of them don't get interviewed. Why does it take 9 months, even 9 months, to determine that this is this person's child? There's no limit on these visas. So if you do the proper process and you can move forward and you're eligible, you get your green card. There's no waiting period like that. There's nothing. So why would it take 9 months? And I'll tell you why. Because the immigration system is overwhelmed. And I don't say that as a poor people, they're overwhelmed. Oh, give them a break. No, because when you ask them why it takes them that long, you know what their answer is? We can't hire enough people. And I'm like, why are you looking for people? What? Like, why do you need a person to flip through papers? You know we have such thing as computers. They've been around for a little bit. We have bots. We now have artificial intelligence, but even before that, for a long time, IBM has been doing vector systems that are like built in with caches. Now, the problem is that until lately, Allcanza, my tech company, there's been no AI that can do both both generative answers and deterministic. In other words, there's been no AI that can look at, okay, here is what you've put into me, my ingest, right? You ingested into me these papers on this part of this packet. I recognize the packet. I recognize the documents and the evidence. Of course, those can be labeled, so it doesn't have to recognize, it just knows what it is. I'm looking through it, I'm collecting data, I'm verifying the data, and then I'm determining probabilities. Now, that last part, that doesn't exist yet. Well, it does now, but it didn't exist as of just a few months ago. So when they say they need a person, I'm thinking, why? Technology exists even before to where they could have scrubbed this information and had it given to the officer in a way that was much easier to process. Now, my system will allow them to do it without having to send it to an officer if there's a 90% probability. Let me give you an example. Let's go back to the example of the person that came in with a tourist visa. She comes in 1999. She has her child in 2002. She's here until 2004. And then she decides, you know what? My mom and dad have never met their grandchild. I'm going to take my child to Mexico for Christmas, and then I'm going to come back. So she leaves in 2004 on December 15th or whatever, and then she comes back on January 10th of 2005. Now, this lady, I'm just using a lady as an example. She came in with a tourist visa that was given to her for 6 months permission. Tourist visa lasts for 10 years, but they only give you permission 6 months at a time, a maximum of 1 year on a tourist visa at any given time without leaving. So this person comes in, she stays well over the 6 months. She stays 4.5 years past the 6 months, and then she leaves. Well, the law says as soon as she leaves, she has a 10-year bar, for which there is a waiver through certain family members, but that's not what we're going to talk about right now. We can talk about that later if you're interested. I do classes on this stuff. So then she comes back into the United States after being gone for 3 weeks or so, and she enters again with her tourist visa. What does this mean? We've already said it. She brought her legal and physical body back to the United States, so she's here lawfully, even though she overstayed before. And she implicitly told the officer when she came in that she was coming in to visit or to do something that was of tourism, right? But we know that she was already living here. She had a home here, she had a job here, and she was going to visit her family in her foreign country, and she was coming back to be able to go back to work. Okay, that's a problem. That's fraud. Well, why is that fraud? Because she said to the officer, I intend, here's my tourist visa, I intend to come for tourism to visit. But in her mind and in her heart, her intentions were actually to come and stay and work. So she lied to the immigration official to get here. Okay, that's considered a fraud. INA 212A9, A6C, sorry. So that's talking about fraud, when you lie or misrepresent yourself in order to get an immigration benefit. In this case, the immigration benefit was to enter the U.S., okay? So that person, when they submit their application, they have to put their entries and exits. They have to answer the question, did you ever overstay your permission by 6 months but less than a year and leave? Did you ever stay here unlawfully for more than a year and then leave? And then did you come back, right? So those are the questions. When they answer those questions, the system knows that this person stayed more than their time, left the country, and came back. Now, an immigration official, being a human, gets tired, gets worn out, gets overloaded. They've done 100 of these over the past 3 months, and they're just worn out, okay? So they miss it. Or they just say, oh, I don't want to have to send this out for an interview. I don't want my supervisor to have to see this. And what they do is they just say, okay, go ahead, send it out. All right, we're going to send it. Give me your medical exam. We're going to approve you. The AI doesn't do any of that. The AI looks at what is given, collects that information, verifies that information, and then determines, because the AI can have access to things that the immigration officials may have a harder time accessing in a quick manner, like I-94 records, which are talking about your entries and exits directly from Border Patrol. So this system will allow us to make it better. There's no reason why it should take 9 to 18 months for somebody who is lawfully fixing their status. We don't want it to be that way. We want to bring people out of the dark and into the light. Why? Multiple reasons. We can know where they are. We know what they're doing. We know if they're paying taxes. It also benefits them because they're able to claim to actually be paid what they should be paid, which then in turn helps the economy, because then you don't have people in the gray market, which means they're doing something lawful, but they're doing it in an unlawful manner. I'm washing dishes, but I don't have permission to work here, right? So it's the gray market. We want to bring them out of the gray market. Why? Because anytime I pay a dishwasher $10 an hour, when the dishwasher should be paid $12 an hour, I'm depressing our economy. I am lowering the pay for that position across the board, which means it hurts the whole economy. So by bringing people out of this and bringing them out of the gray and into the light, then we can make sure that we know that everything is being done above board in the U.S. for the things that we have control over, right? So how do we fix it? That's one of the things we're going to be talking about on this podcast over and over and over again. How do we fix it? But I can tell you there's been attempts before. Right now, there are 11 to 30 million undocumented people, and the number is growing daily. In the U.S., 11 to 30 million, okay? There was an amnesty under Reagan, 1984, approximately 1984. Ronald Reagan did an amnesty. Now, I will say Reagan told the Democrats that held the Congress at that time, I need you to secure my border and I'll give you an immigration reform and amnesty. They said, yes, we'll do it. He gave them the reform and then the border never got secured. So that at that time, there were 5 million people who got the amnesty program under Ronald Reagan, okay? 5 million, approximately 5 million. Today, right, we're about 40 years later, 84 to 2024 would be 40 years, right? So we're almost 40 years later, and there are now 5 times more undocumented people in the U.S. Okay? Correlation does not always equal causation, but that is a pretty strong correlation to giving away free status and more people coming to the U.S., hoping that eventually the same thing will happen again. That's the theory. I'm not saying that's my theory. That's a theory, okay? Now, we will see, when talking about fraud again, we found out later on that approximately 30% or more of the people who applied and obtained their residency through the Reagan amnesty was through fraud. They had employers write up fake letters of employment. So you had to have certain time, you had to be here a certain amount of time, you had to have worked in certain things a certain amount of time sometimes, depending on, one of them was an agricultural amnesty, stuff like that. There was also the braceros that was before that, people that worked in steel and manufacturing. So out of those 5 million, at least approximately 1.5 million were fraud. Now, a system that had AI built in, that wouldn't happen. Now, that didn't exist in 1984, right? We had computers, but the computers were still very small. There wasn't a whole lot you could do with them. But nowadays, we can make sure that that doesn't happen. There was also some smaller things in the recent history, like 245I, which was like these small forgivenesses, right? 245I in 1994, 1998, third iteration in 2001. They were all the same, except for 2001 added that you had to be physically present at a certain time, December of 2000. And you had a petition prior to that was approvable before the date of the 245I to be able to use it. So these are small things that have happened, but they haven't really made a dent in what we need to do. We've seen the number continue to grow, and we've seen the backlogs continue to grow. So one of the things that I did see come out recently from the Republican representative from Florida, Maria Salazar, is she brought out, she is introducing what she calls the Dignity Act. Now, I think there's been other iterations of this brought out before, and it's her and a Democrat congresswoman from, a Democrat representative from Texas, that are together on it now. So it's a bipartisan bill that they've introduced, and I think this may be the third time they've introduced it or something like that. It's growing in its popularity, so we're going to see how it goes. Let me give you an overview. It provides $25 billion a year to border security. That includes infrastructure and improved technologies. It ends catch and release, so people coming in and they're just being released into the United States with an ankle monitor or a phone. By the way, I heard a testimony the other day that was given I think it was in front of the Senate, where one of the officials said that 90% of the people, so Border Patrol gives them a phone and lets them go so that they can know where they're at and contact them, right? So 90% of the time they do not actually answer the call. So the phone that the U.S. government gives them, they don't even answer their calls. So you get their phone, but you don't get you get the phone, but you don't have to take the call. So that's interesting. Anyway, the ends catch and release. It creates 5 asylum campuses around the border that will check FBI check, ID verification, and interview. Okay, I'm actually reading some of this because these are details that are important. I want to make sure that they're right. It provides 5 of those. Now, what it's going to do is if you can determine a person's background, right, in their country and here, and you determine their identity, you know who they are exactly, and then you interview them for asylum and verify that they have a viable asylum claim before you let them in, then at that point, it's much more likely that that person is going to actually fight that claim and return to the court system if it is that they have a court case, right? Or apply with USCIS. Also, I would say that something that I would add in there that may be in there that I haven't seen yet is giving them a work authorization when they've passed the interview and they've verified their identity and they've gone through the background check. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Why? So it also provides an opportunity for an automatic green card to those who have been here for 10 plus years waiting. Now, these are people who have been waiting in line to do it the right way. For instance, I petitioned my sibling from Mexico, and my sibling from Mexico waits 23 years before that petition gets current and that person and my sibling can use it to come in. Okay? So it's very interesting the way that it works. When I say the system is broken, I mean it is shattered into a million pieces, and we're going to work to fix it. So it also allows for 7-year deferred action for anybody who's undocumented who has already been in the U.S. for 5 years prior to the date of the reform. 7 years of deferred action. And then after that, you can either renew, or during that 7 years, you can pay a $5,000 fine, and then you can renew for another 5 years and do a deferred action and do another $5,000 fine in order for you to be eligible to apply for your residency after that time. That's 12 years and $10,000. That's what it would cost for a person who is here undocumented who wants to move forward to residency. And then lastly, it requires a mandatory e-verify. I think it's a great possibility. I think it has work that needs to be done on it, but I think that they're doing a great job. I think it also provides opportunity for instance, it has an option to where a person that comes out that graduates in a STEM degree, I think only PhDs in a STEM degree with a STEM degree are offered the opportunity to apply for visas so that it takes them out, an EB-1 visa, so that it takes them out of the H-1B category and leaves the H-1B for those who are really in H-1B so that it's not so saturated, the backup isn't happening. It also allows there to be a little bit more merit-based because then there's a transition, right? So it's a little more merit-based and a little less based on consanguinity. But that's the current state of immigration. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about this. We're going to talk about fixes that could exist, and we're going to talk about ways that that we're looking at it in order to see how we can help using technology, how we can better the system and make it a lot better. Now, I do want to talk about one last thing. Ending catch and release. I was talking about people being released with their phones or their ankle monitor. It used to be ankle monitors and then became phones. And so there's a lot of anger and angst about people coming in with asylum. But let me tell you one thing, one specific example where the U.S. government's inability to do things efficiently and effectively has caused a major problem in the United States. There's many of them, right? But this is one specific in immigration. When a person comes in and claims asylum, that person is then put through an interview, a credible fear interview. Now, those don't always happen in a celerity manner, but they're supposed to. So with celerity, they're supposed to be given an interview. That interview needs to be passed so that we determine credible fear based on the current regulations, right, the law. And then they're allowed to come in while they wait for their process to happen. However, and they're given certain benefits, like you can get Medicaid, you can get, I think there's even some cash assistance if somebody needs it for certain groups and so on, right? It's not much, but it's a little bit. But we give them a couple $100s a month, and then they can get medical services. But they're told they can't even apply for a work permit for 150 days until they've officially signed and submitted their asylum application. That is not telling the Border Patrol officer, I want to apply for asylum. That's when you actually get released and then you actually file for asylum, whether it be with court or USCIS. You have to wait 150 days from the stamp on that. Then after you do file, it takes them anywhere between 6 months to a year to get you the work permit. So we're telling these people that come on in, we're going to offer you these benefits and we're going to give you a little bit of money, but you can't work until you have your work authorization, and you can't even apply for that until you've been here for 5 months. And by the way, after you apply for that, after 5 months, it's going to take you another year to get it. So we are shooting ourselves in the foot by making it to where people are unable to work, not legally authorized to work, for a year and a half after they arrive. And then people complain because they say things like, these people just want to live off the system. And I'm like, actually, most people that come don't want to live off the system. They want to work. They want to pursue the American dream. They want to move on with their lives. They've just come out of a horrible situation. Many of them, not all of them. In fact, most of people seeking asylum, it's not actually asylum. It doesn't mean their situation wasn't horrible. Maybe they were being abused by a spouse. And they're like, the only way I can get out of this is to run to America, right? Now, that's not asylum, and they shouldn't be approved for asylum, right? But it doesn't mean that their situation isn't horrible. Most of these people come out of horrible situations where they're in true danger or true fear for their lives. And they come to the U.S., and then you're like, you know what? Just live off us a few $100s. What does that create? That creates dependency on the government. That's exactly what we don't want. We don't want anybody that comes here to begin with to be dependent on the government. We want them to be able to make their way, okay? The only way that we can do that is by them having a work permit. So when they leave these new 5 centers, these new, what did she call them? 5 asylum campuses. Sorry, not camps. Camp sounds, don't say camps, okay? They're campuses, okay? So once they leave these, they should be handed a work permit to go ahead and get a job. And there should be like people like us who can help them find jobs. We want to make sure that people are able to start working as fast as they can, start earning their own way, making their own way, and paying for their own keep. And that way, we create people that in the future that if they do then become part of society, a full member of society in the form of legal documentation, then they know how the system works. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They know their role, and they're able to execute their role as a well-oiled part of the machinery they call the U.S. government, or the U.S. The country, not the government. The government's not a well-oiled machine. I apologize. That we call the U.S. of A. Our people are our strength. The family is the nucleus of that. And as we grow off the family, we're able to move forward and grow better. I believe immigration makes us better. I believe immigration makes us better for many reasons. First of all, because we don't have enough people to do all the jobs that we have. And whoever says differently is kidding themselves. How many Anglos do you know that want to go out and pick chili, pick tomatoes, roof? Something like 70% of all people working in roofing and construction are immigrants. It's not because there aren't people without jobs in the US. It's because those people don't want those jobs. But those jobs have to be done. Imagine if we did a mass deportation and 90% of the roofing workforce or 70% of the roofing workforce got deported. You wouldn't be able to finish construction jobs. My point is that immigration makes America better. We need to determine a way that we can work inside the system to make it better so that it works better for the immigrant and for America all at the same time. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast today, stay tuned. We're coming up with more and more episodes. In fact, the next episode is going to be about artificial intelligence inside immigration, how it will work, how it will help the system. Artificial intelligence in general, we're bringing in a subject matter expert that's going to talk about large language models and how they work and how you do epochs in order to refine those models in order to make them better functioning for specific audience and a specific subject matter. So stay tuned. Next time we'll be back. My name is Michael Hendricks. I am your host, and this is Beyond Borders. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.